What if you took the game of life, added some booze, and gave it a makeover for the 21st century? The answer is FML the game.
So FML or FML the game, is a party game. The basis is you get to have sort of a new life.
You pick your gender, and if you're going to go to college or be a burnout. The rest is up to the dice.
Not everything is going to be great. So just as in life, some bad things happen. So if you land on FML space, then you'll draw an FML card. So that's going to be pretty much a wild card.
You could star in your own reality show and make $50,000. Get caught pirating the Game of Thrones and lose $50,000.
So there's a wide variety of what can happen there. Eventually retire.
By the end of the game, you will have racked up a lifetime of memories. After you retire, it's up to you to tell the best version of your FML life story.
How it started was when I was actually living in Kansas City a couple of years ago, and me and my roommate just were out of college and had some creative energy. I was working for a health IT company, so it'd be some travel, but some downtime, so it was mixed where some weeks I'd be really busy, some weeks I wouldn't. I mentioned those downtimes, right? So those were just by my nature not something that I enjoyed. Again, learning something I learned about myself in that case is that I need to be doing things. I have a lot of energy that needs to be put towards something, and if I'm not believing in like the cause that is going towards, or not believing in it, but not committed to whatever it is, then I'll kind of fall off a little bit. So once I decided, okay, this is not what I'm going to be doing long term, then I think subconsciously kind of drifted downward in that direction. We were going to a game night, and the Game of Life came up, and we're like, oh, the Game of Life, that's a fun game, but it's not really updated for modern life, doesn't really like go in terms of like anything modern and like jobs or gender roles or just literally anything. So we thought, oh, that'd be cool if someone created this game. And then the next logical step being, oh, what if we create this game? What are our values, right? So at this point, it's have fun. The second is to give fun, and the third is just to learn a lot. I think the first game we played, where we're just like, wow, this works, it was fun, let's go with it. I think that was the biggest one moment, and then from there it's just been a series of like splitting like different snapshots of all the different times we played with people and just seeing like their laughter and interacting with people and just taking like a step back from everyday life. I think the point that it became like this is an idea versus this is something we want to go towards. In the beginning it was just, oh, let's see what this is doing, let's have some fun and go from there. But we had our first night where we actually showed our prototype to people, and they played it, and it was just a ton of fun for both us and the people playing. So at that point we're like, okay, this is something that people enjoy. Let's keep on going forward with it. We had very wild dreams. So we saw board games. This is like a little bit of a subculture of Kickstarter board games that were just selling like crazy. It just seemed like if you put a board game on Kickstarter, then it would just fly off the shelves. Like we're talking like one had $7 million, one had $2 million. So things like that big. So those were our wildest dreams. Our actual dreams was to reach our funding goal, which was $25,000, and just get the game out there to people, because that's the point of making it, is just to make sure that it gets out there in houses. This seemed like something that people wanted. So from our perspective, it's like, okay, we can give this fun thing to people, they can have fun with their friends, and go from there.
So how did the first Kickstarter go?
So you could look at that different ways, but we didn't make the funding goal. So we our goals for $25,000, and we made $10,000. So at some level, you can be like, wow, great, $10,000, that's a lot of money, awesome. But at the same time, the way Kickstarter works is if you don't hit your funding goal, then you don't get any of the money. So at that point is a very humbling experience for one, just to say like, okay, just because these people had these crazy achievements, that doesn't mean it's going to apply to us. And from there, we kind of had to take a step back and be like, okay, what are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? And then just sort of reset. So that's where we are now. I think the biggest thing would be, you can call it misunderstanding or ignorance of how these things work. So, all of those feelings, like all of those super happy feelings I mentioned in the beginning, so the opposite of those. It was so bad, because it wasn't even that it was just like all of our mistakes became very apparent all at once. Where just like this like light bulb again, where it's just like, oh, we probably should have done this, and this differently. But now, as there's more tasks and responsibilities, it's kind of split into different roles, just based off of time for one, and just our different skill sets. And that's been part of the learning process, is what we're good at, both for ourselves and for this game, working together. So at this point, I handle most of the marketing side, and he handles most of the operations side, so actually like creating the game pieces. So when we do launch the Kickstarter, we'll be ready to go for the actual plastics, because plastics are expensive, we figured out. So again, learning. So we kind of expected that we'd have this core group of people who would start it off, and then from there just take off, because the internet, and there's so many people on the internet. But that was the big mistake there, is that we had the original people and they gave us that 10K, which was awesome. But then it never really picked up steam because we hadn't done the background work to kind of get our name out there within the community.
Was there any question of continuing?
No, actually. No, because it was something where the mistakes we made were so obvious in hindsight at that point, where it's like, wow, we messed up on some things. So it's like, okay, so that was one factor. Second factor being we put a lot of work into this, so like, we're not going to just give up on the first try. That's just ridiculous. Like, in our minds, that wasn't something that we would allow ourselves to do. We'll get it to you at some point. So just people want it. So that's something where we feel like, okay, for us, this is something we need to do. But for people who have enjoyed the game and feel like it's a good idea and want to have it, like, okay, we feel like that our responsibility to make sure they have it also. The creation process itself is just so fun. Just putting what's in our head onto that board and working with other people to get the design and the play tests. And I think if something's positive, of course you're going to keep on rolling with it. And the negative part we've had to learn to handle. And even so, we're doing the second launch of Kickstarter now, where it's going to be much more reasonable goal, and we've worked with our distributors and manufacturers to make sure it's a little bit more achievable. But even so, there's been 6-7 month gap now. And 3 or 4 of those months were just like us, okay, we need to take a break, because it just wasn't there anymore. Because, like I said, our goals are get fun, have fun, learn stuff. So if we're not having fun, then it's like we just need to take a break a little bit.
What are the emotions now that are going through you?
So I think it's probably where they should have been the first time, where it's not too high, it's not too low. It's kind of just like going for, like, we understand what we need to do. We're going to do these concrete steps that we have to do, and then this is how success will look like. Our mindset is totally different, right? So the biggest difference is going to be the funding goal. Whereas before we had $25,000, but now we've taken a lot of the process ourselves, which hasn't been as easy, obviously, but it's something we feel like, okay, we have to do this just to get things off the ground. So our funding goal is going to be either $7,000 or $8,000, depending on how all the numbers work out. But we hit $10,000 last time, so there's something like, okay, we're going to cut costs a lot, make it easier for people to buy it, then just get it out there, because that's what we want to do right now. It's not about like hitting 25K or whatever. It's just like we want to get the game out there and then go from there. So it's a much shorter goal, a much more achievable goal.